ask further, Mr. Chairman, how come Palmerston North and Wanganui were able to do stuff so quickly? And I have to say the Mayor of Palmerston North is rather a hero in some areas at the moment, and it's a student city.
I learned to smoke in Palmerston North.
Did you stop when you got
And
to
Wanganui, actually.
Order.
Go to the North Shore.
Perhaps if I could respond to that through the chair, and you would have noted in the introductory comment the feedback that we got from the research and evaluation of our policy, which was adopted in 2012, was that it was the most comprehensive in the whole of the country. And the fact that we were able to produce such a comprehensive document so far ahead of the other districts and regions across the country needs to be part of the acknowledgement in this as well. What this report is doing is acknowledging the effort that has actually been made by this council through the development of this policy in 2012, and saying that at this point there's opportunities for us to actually build on and improve on that through a review and the development of a new policy. And just also to add to that, we would not be setting aside or discarding any of the work that's been done to date, but would be looking to use that to build and develop the new policy if that's the recommendation of the committee.
Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair, to answer your question, councillor, Wanganui did do a bylaw, they did do it really quickly, and now they're reviewing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because it's not
Councillor
working,
Darby.
Thank you. I'd like to get a sense of the different timeframes here to strengthen the bylaw. To strengthen the policy, and then undertake a bylaw, versus new policy and undertaking bylaw, and the cost difference there too. So, strengthening versus new policy, what is the time difference? And how much does that add to the delay of the bylaw itself? I would imagine that the bylaw process comes in behind the reviewed policy.
So some of the answers to that question are on table 8 on page 25. It gives you the timeframes for each of the options. If you combine, for example, two of the options, we would have to look carefully at how much we could do in parallel to each other. I will note we've had a spate of resolutions for new work in the new council term, and a whole bunch of existing work program that we are delivering as well. We will have to look at the full scope of all the new work that we've been getting and the existing work program, and actually go through and figure out what the priorities are for you with your consultation, and then get a better feel for actual timeframes. But we've given you general ones on page 25.
Now our numbers are different. My numbers are certainly different, because I read it somewhere, but
Through the chair, it's the agenda report.
Yes.
in the report itself on the 25. Okay.
And it's table 8.
So one thing that the report did actually identify is that budgets to support the policy were taken away. Were they socialised? Well, they weren't made available. Is it more that a case? So we put the policy in place in 2013, and then it wasn't supported by budgets that would actually help implement the policy. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So that would have to. So for the policy to be effective, it needs to be supported by budget, and the opportunity for that is in only an LTP year or an annual plan year? It could be an annual plan year next, I gather.
Yes, you are correct. It could be an annual plan year.
Would the policy either strengthened or, reviewed entirely, be in a position for the next annual plan year? Would we be in that position to make confirmation or otherwise on budgets?
So depending on the option you pick today, you can in principle confirm that budget for consideration in the annual plan cycle. If we reprioritise this over other work and looked really, really carefully at how we consult with stakeholders and of course 21 local boards, then yes, we might also get the new thing if it was option 1 we can definitely do. Option 2, we would have to really go hard and we would have to do very different methods of getting engagement from both local boards and communities, like really different methods.
So we may not, with a new policy, it is likely we'd have to go hard, as you say, to reach a timeline that would allow us to make decisions in the annual budget year.
So the costs that you have in the report today give you a pretty good indication of the costs. So in today you could in principle to support whatever option you choose. We think that in the next annual plan cycle, that this amount be considered
Okay.
with other amounts, because you'll be making trade-offs between a whole bunch of other things. So you just go a resolution for it to be considered.
Through the Chair, if I could add to that, and referring again to the Table 8, you'll see that the extra funding for signage, public awareness campaigns and events banners are actually included in all of the options. All of those would require some LTP amendments for that. We could be pursuing budget through an annual plan request without necessarily having to develop a bylaw or a new policy first in order to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Crump.
Hi, can I just clarify that of the amalgamation as per the chairman's recommendations of 2 and 3, how does that sit with paragraph 55 that says under policy, under option 2, quote, the policy would not include a bylaw component? Is that not contradictory?
So when you read option 2 as standalone, that is correct. However, when you put the options together, it would mean staff would go off to fulfil that resolution for both.
Okay, and furthermore, you mentioned earlier, Kat, that 1 and 2 could go together with 3. Gosh, this is going to be an interesting, confusing meeting.
This one?
So what can, I guess the confusion here, right, as you can see, is that we've got a current policy that we say is working well but could do better.
Yep.
And yet you're advocating for option 2, which is start again. So, but you're saying that 1 and 2 can go together. Can you expand on that comment about 1 and 2 could go together with 3?
So 1 and 2 don't go together. 1 can go with 3 and 2 can go with 3.
Okay, so, and I'm foreshadowing 1 and 3 together. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Just got one question. I'll get out of the way first. That isn't covered, and that's the environmental effect of smoking, the impact on fish, the impact on marine mammals, the marine environment. There's a lot of data, autopsies of dolphins, fish, number of cigarette butts in fish and dolphins and whales and turtles is phenomenal.
Okay, the question then.
So my question is, I mean, given that this is a policy that impacts on that environment, are you collecting some data in that area?
So through the Chair, one of the objectives of the original policy was to focus on reducing cigarette butt litter for the purposes of environmental issues. However, through the review, we found that we weren't able to accurately measure what kind of impact the policy was having in that space. And so part of the thinking about both option 1 and option 2 is refocusing on denormalising smoking, and then the latent or sort of related impacts of that would be to reduce smoking and therefore reduce cigarette butt litter as a kind of byproduct, because we were unable to focus on measuring it specifically.
Are you aware of organisations that do measure it? And can you collect data from those organisations? I can make some suggestions as to those.
Order,
organisations.
just let the
on
officer
now, come
answer the question, please.
Well, I'm just trying to evoke a response.
Through the chair, we are aware of organisations that do collect that information, but we weren't able to measure it in relation to the effect of the policy. So, yes, we can get data about how much cigarette butt litter is in a certain cleanup area at a certain point in time, but we weren't able to measure that.
So my question is, sure, you may have some difficulty around measuring, but surely data collection is a base step that you take, and then further analysis of that might follow, and other organisations might be able to help with that. So I guess my question is around the adequacy of that response. The other question that I've got is, it's pretty clear that as far as stakeholders are concerned, a number of stakeholders, that option 3 around a bylaw appears to have significant merit. One of the reasons that you're not pursuing option 3 is because of the inability to issue infringements. But that's based around an assumption that that is not available. Obviously, that could change through the government. And surely if we had a bylaw and other councils had bylaws, then the government would almost certainly enable that. So is it not a chicken and egg situation, that if we want to lead something out, if we want to be proactive, if we want to minimise the massive health impact,
I think, Councillor
and
Walker,
health
the
impact
officer's
of
got
environment,
the gist of what
then
you're
that is an
saying. Let them
effective
answer.
response.
Councillor.
So my question is,
No, Councillor, you've already asked the question. I think the officer can answer it now.
thank you for your assistance, Mr
Oh,
Chair.
No, thanks, so.
Can he repeat the question, Mr.
In terms of infringement fines, so the reality right now is we don't have them. The other reality is the Department of Internal Affairs has indicated its lack of trust in local government generally around bylaws and its deep concern around giving us infringement powers. However, they have also indicated to us our willingness to work together further on it, and we will have a number of staff joining working groups to try and get infringement powers. But at the moment, we have prosecution powers. So I suppose one of the concerns we have, particularly when we're thinking about normalisation and where smoking cessation is, not working quite so well with Māori and Pacifica populations, we're really aware that Māori are already overrepresented in the justice system. So we're also aware that, if you prosecute for smoking, then, those are the highest numbers of those who are still smoking. So it is likely to be perhaps Māori or Pacifica communities. And so we're feeling cautious about that and about that impact. We're also a little bit cautious about if you don't enforce things like a bylaw, then basically it's just a policy anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just
Righto,
have
thank you.
just have a
Council-
question around that,
I think you've had a reasonable chance, Councillor Walker. I'm going to go to Councillor
Well,
Brewer now.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to read it. My concern is what is actually being proposed in option 2 there is not actually what the officers are asking us to do, because they're saying, look, we're not discarding the policy, we're building on it, we're revising it. And when you look at it, it implies that the 2013 smoke-free policy has been a failure and that we're starting from scratch. That's what it implies. Yeah. And you look at our report and it shows that the policy framework and intent are generally effective and well supported, that there has been a reduction in the prevalence of smoking in Auckland since the policy was adopted, and that Auckland as a whole is on track to meet the 2025 goal, but there is some concern around Māori and Pacific Island groups in the Southern Initiative area, around performance measurement and around effective implementation. So I actually think option 2 should read something like this: revise the existing or amend the existing 2025 smoke-free policy, redeveloping new policy framework and intent, with a more targeted demographic approach and a greater emphasis on a more effective implementation